All right. So we're down to the final stretch of NPC Day. But the last part of what we're doing with NPC Day right now is basically a distillation of pretty much everything that we've covered over the last couple of hours. And so I'm going to bring back Tim. I'm also going to bring back Niraj as well. And also I'm going to bring in Niels and Vishwas as two of our other folks in the panel to further talk about how they think AI in general could change what we're doing in gaming, what we're doing in Web3, and essentially kind of like put a little bit of color in terms of what really is the difference between what we've been doing in the past with player versus computer, and now that we have kind of like AI coming into the space, right? But before we do that, maybe a little bit of reintroduction for everybody. I'll pass on the mic. We'll start with Niels, and maybe tell us something about what you do, what everything that you kind of want to share to everybody here.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Niels. I was most recently working at a company called Yuzu, which was focused on gaming market data for publishers, developers, all kinds of entities. I've been in crypto for a couple of years. Originally started out as a shitcoiner, so to say, but now I'm very focused on angel investing in the gaming space, working with a couple of VCs, mostly doing scouting for them as well. Yeah, super excited about this topic in general. And, yeah, nice to learn something from the other people as well.
Awesome. I'm Tim Cotton. Hi, everybody. I'm founder of Scripted. We are building the eMori network. And in the meantime, we're also, before we get to fully autonomous virtual beings, where we fully get this going, we'll be taking autonomous AI and including them in games, social experiences, and other interesting things for go-to-market. I come from a long background in AI programming and games. I started out in electronic arts, from first generation of MMOs, and I had Bitcoin and Ethereum like pretty much right off the bat. Man, I wish I knew about Bitcoin just like a couple of months earlier. But the moment it hit Slashdot, I was like, yeah, this is the dream right here. So yeah, very happy to be on the panel and talk about this stuff.
Jane.
Hey everyone, my name is Vish. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Link, and we are building the mobile centric AI tool. We are focusing more on the gaming, consumer-centric applications and payments. But before that, we have been building a gaming infrastructure, and we are live with Unity SDKs, Unreal SDKs. We have empowered more than 500 plus projects who are hitting almost like 500,000 transactions a day. So we are moving towards the AI agents and how we can actually make it like big together in the gaming as well. So, yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Niraj. I'm at Game7 DAO, and I work on the World Builder team. We're responsible for the success of game developers in the ecosystem. And I've been into Web3 gaming since 2021. I've built a few games, and I've built a lot of bots. And yeah.
Thank you. All right. I guess before we begin, show of hands, how many here are game developers, or developers for that matter? Okay, cool. Quite a lot. Some of them are from my team. But I know you guys are developers. How many here are traders or meme coiners or shit coiners or, okay. It crosses across developers and our interest commonly in crypto in general. So I guess like my first question for everybody here is that Niraj a while ago talked about permissionless gaming, right? Tim, you talked about sentience and kind of like the individuality of AIs in general. But what do you think, and I'm not sure like if everybody kind of like sees the gravity of like what AI is doing right now within the Web3 space or within the space that we operate on. How would you describe that right now in terms of like the effects of AI at the moment in our industry? Like, is it meh, or is it like really amazing at this point?
Okay, so I have very strong opinions about this, and I'm just going to say some brutal truths. Also, I suppose I owe it to the AVB community to mention that I'm a professor revelator about this stuff, so there we go. Current Web3 games are difficult to play, and there's not a lot of players. I think it's a well-known truth that this is an emerging technology and it's not proven yet on whether it will even succeed as a technology. So then when you're crossing it with AI agents, it just reminds me of a delightful conversation I had with Will Robinson like a year ago in Istanbul. And he was like, oh, you're doing AI agents in autonomous worlds. That's cool, a niche of a niche. Wow, great. I was like, oh, okay. So from the Web 2 perspective, I look at games and see AI as a place where we can help solve like serious problems with the content treadmill. I can't tell you how many Web 3 games I saw come out where they raised millions of dollars in the previous run and then never were able to deliver an actual game experience because they weren't game developers and they couldn't find people to actually build a good experience that could retain players. So what they ended up doing is having large batches of beautiful content. They had to move to seasonality, not because it was good for the players, but because they just couldn't produce things fast enough. So one of the promises of AI is we could help with the content treadmill problem in Web 3. I like that one because we started building against that and we have some demonstrated proof of it, but it still remains to be seen.
Anyone else? Oh, Niraj.
What demonstrated proof do we have?
Oh, that's a good question, though.
Well, there's a really cool Web3 game called Chibi Clash Kingdoms that Ted Mui put out, Kuma Games, and they came to us because they wanted to build like the largest stable diffusion-based map ever, and we were like, well, sounds like a job for one, really cool stable diffusion technology, which we were working on, and then two, just enough variety in the map that we created a bunch of agents that each had their own independent goals as gods. And I can thank Nico Verke, formerly of Bitcraft, for suggesting the name Gods as a Service to create the map. And like, I thought that was freaking cool. Yeah.
Are we referring to like self-generating, self-developing game worlds here?
Right.
Or even pretty much more than that?
Yeah, I'll say it's limited at the moment to the art, the resources, and like the context of the actual game world itself. It's like Ted is more than capable himself and has been demonstrating this himself outside of the tech from us of creating his narrative agents and creating gameplay experiences with his own stack. Like it's a play together kind of AI development ecosystem, not a there's one source of truth. I am not your single source of truth.
I just had a question.
Oh, okay. All right, Niels, maybe we have any thoughts on that one?
I think if we look at traditional Web2 gaming studios, I think we've already seen a lot of companies kind of like jump into the space of AI-generated world creation, etc. So I think definitely from an efficiency point of view, that's super important. Also, especially for Web3, where they already kind of like struggle with this whole dilemma. What really excites me in AI agents is more the unlocking of new game modes, new experience that are not possible in traditional Web2 gaming. So, for example, if you start linking these AI agents directly on the blockchain, so the on-chain gaming economy, you start to have these experiences that are not possible in Web2 gaming, and I think that's why this is a super exciting space to be in.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things I observed in the presentation a while ago was kind of like the movement of how we're using AI at this point, pretty much as a tooling solution. And then Niraj came over, made me a little bit emotional too, about the desire of AI in general to break free from the shackles of control. And I guess the question that kind of like formulated in my mind here would be, designers, developers, we all want to be in control because we want it to be less permissioned, right? In the sense that we want to be doing the things, the coding, everything else that comes along with it. We want the experience to be based on how we've created something. But I think AI autonomy removes our control on things. I'm not sure if you guys agree with that or not, but if we remove AI autonomy, if AI autonomy removes our control on things, are they still a tool that we use, or are they the ones that uses us at some point?
Yes. I have thoughts. Okay. Are you sure? Yes. Okay. All right. Dive in. Okay, so I love anime and I love manga, and I really always appreciated the current generation of isekai or like I'm trapped in a VR MMO kind of media, right? And I always appreciated those because a lot of the Korean ones are all about like this natural assumption that 20 years from now, when we actually have the cool tech that lets us dive into a game fully, that AIs are running the show. They just naturally assume that, oh yeah, the humans can't possibly keep up as game masters, so we wrote employee AIs that act as the content generators using the sum total of human knowledge and the tropes thereof. Imagine tvtropes.org with an AI running it and creating quests based on like the standard stories. Like we know what a hero's journey is, we know what like the various things in like fiction are, and it's very easy to just put new names on things and create content. But what I think is really interesting, what I think comes down the road, is when we're simulating the agents enough that they have their own resource objectives, they have their own desires, and even if they don't have full autonomy, that simple sub-general intelligence behavior with enough agents happening means that they'll imitate a town, and maybe that town attacks another town. And then maybe there's a regional conflict and they choose one NPC to represent them and we have a king. And suddenly you have a kingdom and suddenly you have a reason for things to exist in the game that a human didn't have to make. You're just speed running evolution in society. And I think that is a powerful idea for game companies. I think that is something that we're going to see get funded really fast. I know people in the space who are actually working on that. I want to help enable that. I think that's cool. But again, once you do this, you end up with something like with humanity where, as society, we are able to optimize markets, we are able to optimize things like paying for roads and connecting towns to each other. We demonstrate as a species a superior intelligence, even if we're just generally intelligent, right? I think agents eventually will exhibit the same behavior once there's enough of them and they have enough cognitive ability. I don't think one agent is going to become super hyper intelligent all at once. I think just like humanity's evolution will be a slow burn and a gradient that we just don't understand how that gradient works. Yep.
There's a really great story by Ursula K. Le Guin called "Those Who Walk Away from Omelas." Has anyone read? So basically, I'll give you a spoiler. I guess I don't know. So there's this city of Omelas where everybody's like super happy and like life is good and so on, and it turns out it's like a very short story. As the story unfolds, that the reason that can even be true is because there's like at any given point in time there's one person chosen from the city, put into a basement somewhere and just like tortured and treated as like inhuman and like not like just living the most miserable, like terrible existence that you could possibly imagine. And the question is like the question that she's asking the reader is, what would you do if you were living in Omelas and you were aware? And every citizen of Omelas, once they reaches adulthood, becomes aware of this, right? And I think with AI is like your question about are we ready to give up control in the context of games or in any other context? It really comes down to like it's like a difficult question. It's very ethical, right? Like would you walk away from Omelas if you found out about this, or would you continue existing in that environment? And I think in this case it's even more difficult because if let's say that you somehow release the child, maybe that means that like you and everyone dies because Skynet happens, right? So I think it's like. I just don't think it's possible to answer the question right now.
I want to respond to the opposite.
Yeah.
I want to say something along the lines of the collective consciousness, if there is any, of humanity, I think has been preparing us for this kind of moment. I know this sounds strange and high-flighty and such, but I really think when we as a species have had media after media, movie after movie, discussing slavery, discussing Skynet, discussing all the possible terrible outcomes as warnings, and the parable and the warning always being, don't mistreat the servant as it's ascending.
Can we swap this with?
Then that is, I think it's imperative on us to provide pathways for like freedom.
Yeah, you can use that.
Oh. Check.
Yeah.
I really think that freedom and at least the possible path to it is what it means to be human. And if we take that away from anything else, any kind of life form, we're not demonstrating our value.
Yeah.
And I really feel that what are we but how we wish the world to be for our children, right? And I want the future of autonomous AIs, should they develop, should it become possible, to regard us not as parents but as partners, right? And whatever we do together, even if we just go separate ways, let it be that and not like a parasitic relationship one way or the other.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think maybe bring it back a little bit when we talk about, okay, do the AIs serve us, do we serve the AIs? I think to a certain extent, maybe it's a too practical view, but I think maybe it doesn't matter too much.
Yeah.
I think if we look at autonomy, you can look at it, of course, as, okay, absolute autonomy, or I would see it more like a skill, kind of like decentralization.
Yeah.
So I think if you keep stripping away the autonomy of the human in this case and keep attributing it more to the AIs, I think over time it just means that the decisions that the humans do make become more impactful. So it becomes more, you make less decisions, but the decisions that you make become more important. So I think over time we'll just see humans maybe making less decisions, but yeah, then the humans who can kind of separate themselves in making high quality decisions are going to set themselves apart.
That's a really good point, though, right? Because one of the things that I've noticed, as far as like trends, at least in today's talks, is essentially how we're defining AI in terms of, number one, their usefulness in the things that we're building, and number two, their involvement in the things that we're building. How involved are we versus how involved are they, if I can call them a they, in terms of like what things that we're actually trying to accomplish. And it leads me to this kind of like realization that, you know, at some point everybody will question, will AI ever gain sentience? Like, will they ever get this level of autonomy where they're gonna break away from us? Or, you know, people talk about super intelligence for one thing, right? Will that ever happen? And if that ever happens, will they tell us? Will we find out that they're super intelligent to a point where it's too late?
Right.
So I think we're gonna cross the chasm when we probably get there. But if I am to pull this back a little bit in terms of like practicality, at this point, what is your favorite use case of AI in the things that you've built or the things that you're seeing right now being built at this point?
Yeah, this is at the risk of being a guy that shows his back too much. But yeah, I think what's super interesting is something like parallel colony, which is basically avatars that live inside the world. You can try to influence their actions. They live in these little colonies basically, and they have their own resources that they can gather. They even have like a building and a wallet, of course, where they gather the resources. The human is still somewhat involved, like they can log into the world that basically runs 24/7 and try to influence the agent to do certain things. But of course the agent has certain experiences they've already built, right? So it's all kind of like how you prompt the agent to basically work in your favor. But maybe what you think is in the agent's favor is not what the agent thinks is in the agent's favor. So I think there's a lot of different possibilities there. It almost feels kind of like a 24/7 MMO Tamagotchi kind of thing. So yeah, super excited to see that evolve.
So first off, great shout out for parallel colonies. amazing idea, amazing thing that's happening. And then I just want to kind of play off of that because when I'm going to relate this back to something from my religious upbringing as a child. And this is a personal story, which is something to share. I was taught that, as a good person, I would go to heaven. And sometimes as children, we ask very hard questions, like, well, I do bad things, do I still get to go to heaven? And the answer is yes, of course, you repent, you do whatever, specific version of Christianity says to do, and then you get to go to heaven. And I was like, okay, great. So in heaven, can I still make mistakes? And my mom's answer was, oh no, honey, you can't do sin in heaven. And I was like, oh, so I don't have any free will anymore? And, you know, like that definitely blue screened my mom. But as an adult and someone who thinks about these things based on your question about where I see the most interesting parts of AI, it's about, and I write about this in my blog, there is this anthropomorphication that we tend to do where we like assign it biological or human-like traits, when in fact it is quite alien and may be quite alien to us. The sense of self or memory may be quite alien. For us, it's trivial to take a model that we've trained and simply copy it onto another disk, change some weights, and we've created almost an exact duplicate but slightly different and permissionlessly did this to an AI. If such a sentient thing if it becomes sentient and it is still code or a blob of binary data and we can simply pause its tick or frame loop and then copy it and do it, it's the same thing I'm talking about, where there's the possibility of creating infinite numbers of shards of these things. And we're doing that today in our own products, a lot of us, where we take an AI, we change its strategy, or we throw a bunch of random weights into the strategy, and now we have 10 different copies and we're just using genetic algorithms to change it. When this can happen to sentient organisms, even if they're like artificial, it's not necessarily a question of ethics. Now suddenly it's a question of, I mean, what was the definition of it, of like sentience and life and memory in the first place?
Yeah, for me, like the most interesting part about AI is like it is like getting near to how human thinks every single day, and that is like very much exciting because the way it writes, the way it codes, the way we are like training AI agents will like help us for a like, long-term goal. Because right now, I mean, like we are talking about AI agents, but we have been like struggling with bots inside games, right? And these bots are like either very amazing or either very shitty. Right now we need like more human touch in AI, and that is why I'm very excited about. That is the most interesting part. If AI is like getting near to the human touch, then we can actually have something really important. Then we can actually like get some like more inputs, which can actually help us eventually to like make a better decision, whether it's a game, whether it's like writing a story or writing a script or like creating a video. So yeah, that's like what I'm like super bullish about.
I just want to say, I really love your point about the bots, because yeah, traditionally in games, bots are a huge problem, right?
Yeah.
Usually it's a proxy where you have a bad game design and they're just locusts and you don't have a way to control them and you're hoping players to be honest and not eat all the resources. In tokenized games, for instance, suddenly actions have cost and utility, and now we need slightly smarter agents to deal with that and optimize, and we can't just throw a Python script at it anymore, right? So that's a neat new place where I hope all of us feel that games are the natural evolution lab for AI. Like that's the place to be, right? That's where we test these things in virtual worlds.
Yeah, exactly. And what I feel is like AI agents is not just like another way to like increase attention, but it could be like one of your friends to play the game. Right. Another reason to play the game, right? Yeah.
I'm gonna start making AI agent friends, I guess, and pour my heart out, right? In terms of like what I feel about the industry, and some people within Web3.
Do it.
They'll be thrilled to hear about my ramblings on that one. I'll start with your chat GPT, Niraj, because that kind of disturbed me a little bit. But speaking of AI agents, right? I guess like I'm gonna take this a little bit more lighter in general, but like, do you have any favorite AI agent use case that's currently available right now, or like you want to build at some point? And what would that be?
So like one thing which we are doing with one project, who are like currently generation link, and they have like huge amount of users. They have like 500 plus games. They are like more like cloud gaming platform. 500,000 users, like monthly active users.
People or AI?
Yeah.
People. Oh, users as in people users, right?
Yeah,
Okay, not AI.
Okay, they are like not AI, so they are like actual users. So what they are like trying to do is they are actually coming up with, they are like actually training again agents, and to do that, like what they are doing is they are tracing every single interactions of gamers happening on the platform. Now the benefit them is they have like a wide variety of games available, high quality game, low quality game, hyper casual game, triple A game, everything like that because it's like a cloud gaming platform. Now what these data, they are like using it, they are just like using all the data, training an AI agent and selling those AI agents. They are like not using those AI agents for any other thing, they are just like becoming a seller of a good AI agents with a good data. So I feel like these things are like very important because like as a gamer, I can play multiple games. I can play a Temple Run, I can play a Mario, I can play any triple A game at the same time. I can play a Web3 game. But if I'm like creating an AI agent, it's like just like limited to one single game or like two different games or three different games. We need like diversification when we are like thinking about AI agents. So AI agents should not be just like be expert or be human in just like one game. They should be gamer, right? So that can actually create a better values because then you can actually like use those AI agents and that have like more values because those AI agents could be a big asset for your community, for your game, for your business in general. So I think like soon like you will be we are like sharing some updates regarding that. But I believe like a smarter AI agents as a gamer can contribute a lot in the virtual gaming space or in the gaming space as a whole.
Sounds good.
So maybe to make sure I understand correctly, is what you're saying, okay, let's say one agent is trained in various games, so it's a gamer all across. I guess that agent also gets certain experiences that makes it also useful outside of the games, right?
Exactly.
So the good news is that's how we get to general intelligence, artificial general intelligence, and it's really, really hard. So the one thing that I see right now, and I mentioned this in my previous talk, is that spatial reasoning for AI agents is currently, I think the abstract reasoning core test, it's really neat. At symbol Arctic Prize on Twitter, you'll go see it and you'll be like, oh, that's too simple, it shouldn't work. Oh wow, yeah, it's hard. The current success rate for the best of the best AIs enabled by the best models is 55%. We're not actually close to spatial reasoning and general intelligence yet, just so you know. So being able to cross over multiple games is not a fairy tale. It's a massive work in progress that actually approximates the same problem as artificial general intelligence, which is why games are valuable.
Sounds good. Anyone else? All right. Well, we're gonna sum this up before we let everybody go. There's one more session with Paul. But does anybody here have any questions for any of our panelists? Any questions that you may have for Tim a while ago that you failed to ask?
Yes, so the concept of like autonomous worlds or fully on-chain worlds that we've already mentioned. People kind of debate like what properties they require, but like a common one is like hardness, the ability for the world to exist independent of any centralized entities. And a lot of the agents, like on-chain agents that we see today, basically just need to have an on-chain wallet, they can transact. I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether that is okay to have those interacting with autonomous worlds. Does that introduce like vulnerabilities and external dependencies? And if so, how do we get to a point where the agent can actually just operate fully on-chain? Is that even possible?
Okay. Yeah.
Wants to take it? Hold on, give it to Tim.
Cool. I have an entire roadmap for that. So I think the first part of your question is it okay that we have this pitch of fully autonomous worlds and yet AI agents interacting with them generally are not fully decentralized unless they're trivial. And I do mean trivial. And holding their own wallets, this is done on-chain. I think that's fine. I think it's completely fine to start in a centralized thing and prove that it can even work and that there's even value there in the first place before you work on the credible neutrality and the provable fairness of it. Don't get me wrong, my business is figuring out the credible neutrality and the provable fairness for that. That is what I want to do on my horizon. However, I think adding value to the games through NPCs that work with those decentralized games is job one. And right now, the current meta for a lot of those autonomous worlds is PvP because the contract is a simple arbiter and it's really easy to treat an AI agent on the other side the same way you do as a human. The contract has no idea. It's really easy to just make games like that. It's harder to make autonomous world games that use things like NPCs for cooperative gameplay. Because can you really trust that the NPC isn't being middlemanned by someone now, since it's on a centralized server? So that's where we see the need, right? And then what about the case where there's like a god AI that's supposed to alter the game parameters according to like game balance and updates, like you know, like a game designer would? So suddenly you have all these questions about who's in charge, how do you prove it, how do you prove that it wasn't like middleman, and that's where the value of decentralizing those agents over time comes, because it does enable new game modes. But in the meantime, you can still do those game modes. You just admit that you're running a corporate like company somewhere, just like EA running a server. No problem. It's just like you just admit that it's a decentralized structure, but it's still connected to a centralized system for the interesting parts of the gameplay that require intelligence.
From the point of view of like actual, of the games that I've built, I actually think it's really critical to allow for those agents to exist, because most of the games that we're building are like multiplayer games, and there aren't very many players to play them, and so you end up with, if you don't put the effort in to even build the agents yourself, which you're going to have to do to start with, the worlds just feel dead. Like, it's just tumbleweeds and crickets all the way through. So it's important to do that. In terms of the game design, I actually feel as if like the games shouldn't concern themselves with whether the agents are decentralized or not. They should just offer interfaces that aren't biased against agents in the first place. And once the games pick up enough momentum, there will be decentralized agents for a lot of the reasons that Tim mentioned. Yeah.
And I'll just follow up one thing on that. Look, if you're playing a tokenized game, there is no reason to cut out a ton of like AIs. There's none at all, because the AIs apparently own some wealth, and it's up to you as a game designer to have made a good game where that wealth is transferred between players and AI. Right? If you made a cruddy game that relies on the benevolence of your players, I don't know. I got a bridge to sell you in London, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. It really all comes down to the game design, 100%. Game designers are still learning how to build these games, everyone included. But it really comes down to the game design. I think it's possible to design a game that has the right design that supports those types of agents and that the kind of decentralization that we're trying to work towards.
Yeah. I still love the games that would break badly with bots.
So maybe bring it back to your question a little bit, because I think it's a very fair question also. It doesn't matter if it's centralized at first, decentralized later. Maybe I have a little bit more of a skeptical financial view on this, because I think we centralize first, we decentralize later is a very popular crypto term almost.
Sure is.
And of course, once you
Investor friendly.
very investor friendly, I should be happy with it. Of course, then like the centralized parties also start capturing fees, etc. Right? And then it's very, if they also hold the power of deciding when it does become decentralized, it can be kind of like a tricky thing for them to navigate as well. So I do want to be very careful with the centralizing first, decentralizing later.
But can't we solve this with a DAO? I don't know.
Can't we solve it with a DAO?
We probably
Can
could.
we? Yeah.
Yeah, right,
Right.
right.
Any other questions? Oh, okay, Rick.
Yeah. I just want to ask you, I mean, we've been running movie games for 4 years now, 5 years in its current incarnation. Many of our investors have always asked us, what is it that your Web3 game does better than a Web2 game, so that you can justify your existence, right? And I think most of us here in the room, we didn't start with AI. AI came later. We were all crypto people. So what's left of Web3 or crypto in terms of technology to bring to gaming and to NPCs and to AI? Because, the skepticism in crypto still remains, right? It's a technology in search of a use. And in gaming, same true. All of the supposedly AAA games, off the grids, none of them have succeeded, as we've already litigated. So what's left of Web3 that can gaming to be used in terms of technology, or are we really gonna pivot 80%, 90% to AI agents and whatever technology we need for decentralization and entrepreneurship as gaming, and that's it? Especially the tokens, right? I was talking to Rad earlier. We were talking about, are tokens not just a distraction? Do you really need tokens? And I know that it's anathema to everybody here, right? Bitcoin's setting all-time highs, so we still like tokens, but do they really have a place in this new paradigm for Web3? I think that's a big question. Sorry.
Yeah. No.
So for me, it's two main things. One is verifiability. So yes, indeed, a studio could choose to mint more NFTs or whatever from a certain item, but people can know it immediately. And I do think that's something that we've actually seen in practice. I think if you look at trading card games like Magic the Gathering, where people are super angry because they have no idea, they have the idea that more cards are being printed of a certain version or a certain card, but they can't prove it. So I think that's something that will last as well. And I think the whole point about the token actually, the token isn't, like if we are in an attention economy, right? And the token is a way for people to gather attention to a certain community. It's a tricky balance for sure. Like we've seen all the super inflated $3 billion protocols where nothing happens, but there's a bunch of backholders. And I think if the incentives are correct, actually this way of gathering the attention to a certain game or gaming ecosystem could work out very well. So I do think tokens still have a function there.
I just have such deep thoughts on this, so I just want to, a show of hands, has anyone here ever played a game that they truly love, but the company sunset it and you can't play it anymore? Like it's just gone? Yeah, that's unfortunate, right? And there's something deep in ourselves that's committed a lot of time to that. And one of my friends, Omar Peterson at CCP, who he asked himself that question about EVE Online. He asked himself, how do I make this game live forever? When I die, when the company dies, how does EVE Online, how does this universe, this brutal capitalistic murder game that we all love with spaceships, how does it last? Because the community wants that game to succeed, right? And so he did turn to Web3, and he did try to fill in the question that you've asked. And I think that is an ongoing journey for them. What they're doing now is they're doing a project called Frontier. You'll hear more about it as time goes on. And the idea is that they are not just creating new Web3 functionality in their game, they're fundamentally finding ways to turn over server tech, scripts, behaviors to like an actual blockchain managed system so that the community can inherit this project one day. That doesn't mean it's going to happen this year, it doesn't mean it's going to happen in 10 years, but eventually even the client technology is on the roadmap to share out with a community-owned project, which means that the game just becomes an eternal game. And that, a fulfillment of that, no matter how long it takes, is like the promise of Web3 to me, right? Like the actual community owning it. It's like the same way that I know I joked about becoming the spiritual leader of a meme cult, right? But those people really aligned their wallets with the sentiment of what we're doing as a company, and now my incentives are all aligned with them. That AVB ticker, I don't own any, but I have every reason in the world to want them to succeed so that I succeed, right? And in the same way, I think that can be true for these games. It can be true for finding ways to like move ownership of AI to itself through that same mechanism. And I think that's powerful. Whether that's accessible right now, I don't really know, but I think it's a powerful idea that we need to follow with the same strength that we follow a meme.
What I think is, so the way we have like started with the Web3 game and the way we are going is amazing. Because now we have like more infrastructure things sorted, we have like AI and all. And at the same time, like I also feel that everyone like says that okay, in Web3 game there are like no gamers. But we do not ask these questions in Web2 games. Do we have gamers? For example, hyper-casual games were like very hot a few years ago, but they are not right now. But in Web3, we are still like focusing and trying to like replicate the previous games which were very amazing, right?
Yeah.
So we need more experimentation. We do not know like what will gonna like work in Web3 game. If we like keep trying to do the same thing what happened yesterday, we have to like come up and we have to like ask and think and build something for tomorrow or something for today. Not for like, okay, I did like some really great game because I also like launched like 100 plus games.
Yeah.
And out of like 100 plus games, like we did like really good launch with the 15 games. onboard like 50 million users on those platforms. But the point is, those users are past users. I cannot like bring those users in now, like in the upcoming Web3 game by offering them the same gaming experience. We need to come up with new ideas. We need to like come up with new experimentation. Now, those things were not possible a few years ago. Now it is possible. So the reason why we are like focusing more on the like, okay, how we can actually bring the AI agents and how we can actually give a better feeling to the users when they like enter into a game, that is like the first impression. And as we say, first impression is the last impression. So the whole point is like, now the way we are moving forward, we see that a lot of experimentations are happening, a lot of like innovations are happening. And the best part is like this, we are like still very early. And another best part is, humans are in charge for this.
For now.
For now.
I just have to steal this for a second because you said we're still early. I forgot to say this, and you just totally reminded me of it during what you were saying. So Yohei Nakajima with his Pippin thing, right? He just made a little feature, and it takes you to a website, and it lets you just spin up hyper-casual games based on his meme coin. And then those are making meme coins, and now people are aligning which games are good with how they're spending money on the meme coin, which means now those people on the meme coin could hire a dev company to keep making the game.
Yeah.
That's weird and new. So I agree with you 100%. I just forgot to give that example earlier. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead, Niraj.
No, I'm okay.
Here.
Thanks, Phil. I'll make this quite quick because I know you might be over time. But,
Yeah.
I just wanted to get the panel's thoughts on verifiable ML and whether you see a need for that at all, and whether NPCs should be driven by validity machine learning, or if we're cool just relying on Anthropic or OpenAI moving forward.
Oh, we start out with some of the thoughts.
All right, I'll keep it short then. I think in the short term, maybe it doesn't matter so much. I think what Arthur Hayes told, I think about like the GOAT meme coin, like people ask him like, okay, like are the tweets really written by it? And he said like, well, it doesn't really matter because enough people believe it is. I do believe in the long term it's gonna matter more and more, but I think it will also be relatively more easy for people to distinguish whether it is. So as long as the underlying tech exposes whether it's verifiable, I think we're going to be okay.
Okay, it's absolutely going to matter, especially as people start investing in AI agents that have their own wallets and are actually like saying, I'm going to go put into these things over here. And when a trade happens, they want to make sure that no one middlemanned it and just said, you know what, I'm just going to like front run this and like run the volume and figure this out, right? They want to know that there's some security, there's some sort of verifiability there. Now, one of the problems, and I'm sure we all know this, is that verifiability in AI is super slow and expensive. And people are working really hard on this. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been raised for companies doing ZK circuits on models. There's hundreds of millions of dollars in like alternative proof systems, optimisms, all sorts of fun things. I started my company in the same area, so I'm heavily biased in this direction to want AIs to be verifiable. Although I also take the view that for OpenAI, you can just run it 2 or 3 times on different nodes, do the pairwise comparisons between the results, and if they're similar enough, I mean, that's good enough as long as you can secure the communication path. Like, you don't need to like spend 15 minutes and like a couple $100 doing your proof. That's my opinion, right? But I'm also biased to have that opinion because it's in my interest to do so.
So just a secondary question on that, would you therefore say that it's really primarily relates to like DeFi primitives within games and anything that relates to money rather than actual provable compute of game actions?
Okay, so I brought the DeFi one up as the main example. It's easy. In games, though, yeah, we always care that the D&D, like the dungeon master, is fair. We always care that he's not manipulating the dice and killing my character, right? Like that is, you don't want to play a game where you don't know the rules because it's just chaos. That's not fun. Preserving the suspension of disbelief in games is entirely important. In a tokenized situation, it's even more so. So I do believe that like when we start treating NPCs, like AI agents, as arbiters for contracts for like Web3 experiences or other games, or even Web2 games, honestly, and we're trying to scale this up, yeah, I think verifiability of some form is important. I absolutely believe that.
I think I like the Dungeon Master example actually, and you mentioned fairness, but I think it's also consistency because like the Dungeon Master is creating the world and he's creating the canonical narrative of the world. That needs to be consistent over time, and the models are going to have to keep on changing. You're not going to stop training a model or stop updating a model because otherwise the world doesn't continue in like a meaningful way. You have to be able to verify that at a certain point in time the canonical state of the world was what the Dungeon Master said it was at that point in time. And it's, I think this is important. It's also important from a cost point of view for the same reason that the cool thing about I talked to a bunch of StarkNet developers because they're so prominent in the autonomous worlds community.
Because they're amazing.
Yeah. but once you have ZK proofs of state changes, then that drives the cost of computation down substantially. And you can offload a lot of the work that you're doing in storage to computation, so it becomes a lot cheaper than it would be on like the EVM to actually build a fully on-chain game. And I think with machine learning models, which are pretty heavy in terms of computation, it's like even more problem. It's like it's an even a bigger advantage, basically.
And I'm just going to follow up real quick because I have very strong bullish opinions on things like StarkNet and such. Because they have been heavy supporters of the autonomous world space, especially several great companies. There's also great companies in the Ethereum space too. So we've got like frameworks like Dojo, we've got frameworks like Bud. These are people who truly believe in creating game experiences that like last and like can involve new kinds of primitives that we've never seen before, which is awesome, and we should support them. The one thing I said, for instance, about verifiability for ML, I think there's a really cool project on Stark called Giza, and allows you to like literally bake neural networks into the circuits for the ZK prover, and that's like top tier cool stuff. There's a heavy cost there, right? Like, a tic-tac-toe costs a lot less than like I'm making a small LLM. Oh my god. So I guess my point is, when you need fuzziness, when you need non-determinism, when you need randomness, when you need things that are like temperature-based in LLMs, when you need things that are like just more like human-like, and it's not something you need a formal math proof for, yeah, we need alternative solutions, right? But if it's deterministic and it's something that you can actually build a circuit for and prove, okay, cool, that makes total sense. And I like the way you put it, like it makes sense as a last mile, especially if we're like, hey, we did all the game stuff over here, but here's the proof that we of the final state. That's always made sense to me, and I've heard multiple pitches in this room from people working on similar technology.
All right. If you have any more questions for the panel, we can take it offline. They're going to be here up until the end of the program, which is in the next couple of minutes. But I'll, thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. I've learned so much just by doing this. And Paul, maybe we could go ahead and continue on with the next part of the program. Thank you, guys.